Our next speaker is Dr. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this. Pneumonia. Um,
Pretty close.
yeah,
I
right.
go by Nem.
All right, all
Thanks
right.
for the introduction.
Yeah, from the energy conversion group of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. He'll be presenting high efficiency, self-contained, vapor-fed, unitized regenerative fuel cells for lunar water ISRU.
Thanks for the intro. Happy to be here to discuss our work over the last few years on unitized regenerative fuel cells and how we're looking to adapt them for the lunar missions. Can you go next slide, please? So just as a background, a unitized regenerative fuel cell is effectively a fuel cell and electrolyzer in one device. That's the unitized name. Discrete regenerative fuel cell would be two different cell stacks that have a shared balance of plant. So this is a convenient way to save a bunch of weight by unitizing the cell stack and the balance of plant. There are a couple different ways you can operate these devices electrochemically. I'm just going to focus on the constant gas mode of operation that's shown on the right, where effectively the challenge of combining the cell stack into one device is that you need to run the oxygen evolution and oxygen reduction reactions on the same electrode. The hydrogen oxidation and hydrogen evolution reactions on the opposite one are much easier because there's effectively no oxidation of the platinum, and you can use the same catalyst for those two reactions. The balance of cell components, the gas diffusion layer, are kind of adapted to those environments. So that's great. On the oxygen side, the other difficulty is that typically we would flow liquid water through that compartment in electrolysis mode when we're doing oxygen evolution on typically iridium catalysts. And then you need to flow air or oxygen for the fuel cell reaction, oxygen reduction reaction in a kind of vapor-fed environment. Most of the work we're doing, and I'm showing, is on PEM-based unitized regenerative fuel cells. They operate around 80 degrees Celsius, Nafion or perfluorosulfonic membranes. So a lot of the materials that I talk about, they're all commercially available. They've all been proven out from very what we call life support applications in submarines to the space applications currently, to terrestrial applications in power generation and looking at new energy capture sort of energy storage applications for these materials. But they're all kind of commercially available and much higher TRL than let's say some of the alkaline membrane work or the capabilities that the membrane allows for is not available in KOH type electrolysis or fuel cell systems. So it's kind of for us, it's the right technology for this job in the near term. Can you go next slide, please? It's just kind of a breakdown more of the cell components, and I just wanted to point out a few things that are of interest that are unique to the URFC as opposed to a fuel cell or the electrolyzer. And it kind of it deals with accommodating the cell stack environment on the oxygen evolution side and the oxygen reduction side for this unitized function. So that means that it has to survive greater than 1 volt, meaning carbon-based materials are not acceptable because they will oxidize. So everything has to basically be made out of, for terrestrial applications, titanium, meaning we're not doing high-pressure oxygen generation. So usually use titanium-based materials. We coat them with platinum for further oxidation protection. And this constitutes the porous transport layer. The flow channels also need to be made out of titanium. So that's the most unique part in terms of what the fuel cell we normally see. There's challenges to that in that we're not using these typical gas diffusion materials that are compressible. They have nice wetting properties for a lot of the fuel cell reactions, and they're optimized for those environments. And so the challenges that we've been addressing in the last few years have been to really demonstrate the potential of technology in a way that hasn't been done to date by optimizing the mass transport, the charge transport, in particular the oxygen side of the cell in a unitized configuration, meaning all the materials are built to be durable in this environment and to get the best performance we can out of these things. Most of what I'm showing is commercially available catalysts, commercially available membranes. The porous transport layers we use are adapted from electrolysis applications using a kind of Teflon wetting process. So it's nothing too, I would say, extravagant at this point, as we're just trying to demonstrate the best we can with the technology as it is. Next slide, please. So like I said, since this work is Department of Energy funded, our applications have been mostly terrestrial, and this is sort of where we're coming from. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that means, in 2020, 2021, this means energy capture. So it's no longer just URFCs for unmanned vehicles, which has been the main application up to now. It's how do we actually use these things to help balance the grid, help in reliability and resiliency applications, where actually being able to store more energy in the form of hydrogen is incredibly valuable relative to what a battery could provide, because you're just able to reduce the cost of the storage and scale it while still getting benefits out of the system in a kind of a peak shaving or demand charge reduction scenario. And this is just some of the modeling data that we're currently kind of working on, showing that you can effectively use the URFC to give you some of this demand charge reduction during the day, and then give you up to a 3-day backup window of power if you need it, with just rebalancing the stored hydrogen overnight. Over the weekend. Next slide, please. So going to lunar energy storage applications, so outside of this sort of daily shifting window, meaning that you're kind of charging and discharging between 4 to 12 hours. Sometimes you couple it to solar. In the lunar applications, the charge discharge time frames are much longer, and this is, I think, particularly well suited for the UFC relative to batteries. There's just a lot less material that needs to be lifted into space, and just the figure on the right shows the curves for batteries need to come down with in particular with improvement in technology and weight reductions, whereas in the UFC case, we're looking at improving the technology to improve efficiency, but the weight can be scaled much easier because the storage is decoupled. Next slide, please. Yep.
Someone's open the mic right now. Can you shut that off? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. Next slide. So this is again preliminary work. We have references at the end. This has already been published, but what I'm showing here is a unitized cell, the charge and discharge curves, or charge in electrolysis mode, discharge in fuel cell mode at the bottom, using either air or oxygen as the reducting gas. And then the resulting efficiencies. And so one of our figures of merit or metrics is 1 amp per square centimeter round trip efficiencies. And so we really have demonstrated greater than 50% at 1 amp per square centimeter in these cells. And then we were able to run them out for, in this case, is 500 hours of charge and discharge with sort of steady state holds. We've also done in different papers, or what we're doing currently, our accelerated stress tests, where we really try to get these things to degrade a lot faster. Next slide, please. Things that we've been addressing and why we're able to get these high round trip efficiencies are essentially looking at mass transport. So I mentioned before, this porous transport layer introduces a particular problem for the fuel cell mode of operation. And so making that titanium look more like carbon and fluorine has been one of the challenges, and looking at how these structures of these PTLs will affect the mass transport, and that's the figure on the left. The catalyst layer itself is also unique, because now we no longer have platinum on carbon to create nice structures in the catalyst layer to reduce the mass transport and localize mass transport that we see in fuel cells, because we're using unsupported platinum black and iridium oxide. And so we've also made headway there in terms of looking at the structures that are formed in the catalyst layer and optimizing the processes we use to making those catalyst layers to optimize mass transport with again, benefits in round trip efficiency. Next slide, please. So this kind of goes into, there's a lot of data here, but basically the structure of the porous transport layer can affect the round trip efficiency. So if you look on the right, from 52% to 43%. So a huge impact of just changing out the porosity and the tortuosity of the porous transport layer as the only variable. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to go into detail here. We're developing ASTs so that we can cycle these things. So we're not just doing steady state holds. We can actually get them to break down faster. Look at using the APS with our collaborators to study the agglomeration of these catalysts with time and how they're degrading, and then to hopefully develop new materials that would withstand these much more robust demands that the URFC experiences relative to a fuel cell or electrolyzer alone. Next slide, please. So now speaking specifically to all vapor operations, so what I was showing up to now, what we've done to now is liquid-fed electrolysis operation and vapor-fed fuel cell operation, which is sort of ideal because you get great mass transport in electrolysis mode.
We're out of time, so can you quickly wrap up here?
Yeah, this is the last slide. Yeah, sure. So basically, what we've demonstrating here is with a vapor-fed electrolyzer, we're getting up to about 43% round trip efficiency and 1 amp per square centimeter, and it's sort of demonstrating the pathway we'd like to take, because using vapor in electrolysis mode, you can use dirty water. You're just looking at getting some of that vapor out into the gas phase to run the electrolyzer on. So there's a lot of potential, I think, for lunar applications, and this is sort of something that we're currently working on. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.